Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching Study with Sudhir, your own digital classroom. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to teach you what happened in the Second World War. And we are going to do this longest chapter in two parts. I can promise you it's going to be a fascinating journey because I'm extremely happy with the kind of research material I have prepared for you. So it's going to be fun. As I always say, listen to it like a story. You can refer to your textbook after this, and I can promise you it will be a cakewalk after that. It's going to be extremely engaging. Now, what really happened in the Second World War? That is the third chapter of the world history part of your syllabus. I hope you have already seen the videos of the First World War and the rise of dictatorships. If you haven't, please go. I'm doing the entire syllabus all over again, focusing more on English, a bit of Hindi here and there, but largely in English because the entire set of chapters have already been done in Hindi before. Okay, so this is largely the English explanation. Now, before we get into it, let's look at the syllabus. What exactly does the syllabus say? The syllabus says that you need to know the causes, the different causes for the Second World War that led to the Second World War, and the entire list is provided on the ICSE website. In previous years, one of them, the policy of appeasement, was removed, but it is now back for the 2026 board examination. Then you will be talking about the attack on Pearl Harbor, very dramatic, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and then the consequences of the Second World War, the Pearl Harbor, Hiroshima, etc., and the consequences we'll do in part 2. So let's get into it straight away. Now, please remember that what exactly, there was a gap of 20 years because this First World War, the fighting ended in 1918. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, and the Second World War started in September 1939. So that means roughly 2 decades separated the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War. So are we to understand that this was in some way a continuation of the First World War? No, not exactly. It was not really a continuation. However, the reasons, many of the reasons for the start of the Second World War, they actually were from the consequences of the First World War. The First World War did something which contributed to the Second World War within 21 years. So the treaties, mainly the Treaty of Versailles that was signed, that was one of the main reasons why the Second World War broke out in 1939. So the destruction caused by the Second World War, and as you can see in this very dramatic illustration, you can see the atom bomb dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You can see the kind of effect it has had on the soldiers, and you can see the Treaty of Versailles that was in tatters by the beginning of the Second World War. So the destruction that was caused by the Second World War, it surpassed every other war that had been fought so far, including World War I, which is why it is referred to as a world war, right? The Second World War fought between September 1939 and September 1945. And it brought the world to the brink of disaster because for the first time, the atom bomb was used. Till then, the atom bomb had not been used by any country on any other country, resulting in the death of hundreds and thousands of civilians. Absolutely traumatic. I was reading in the newspapers about how the Pakistan Field Marshal Asim Munir has also said that if we go down, we will take half the world down with us, because don't forget, we are also a nuclear power. So you see, right now in 2025, many of those things are again coming back 80 years later after the end of the Second World War. So what are the causes? What were the causes of the Second World War? The first one and the most prominent one was the Treaty of Versailles. Because the treaty, if you remember from the First World War chapter video, it was seen as humiliating Germany. That, we leave Germany so crippled that it should never be able to fight a war again. So it was seen to be punishing Germany very harshly, and that led to anger. That led to bitterness, that led to resentment, annoyance among Germans, and Adolf Hitler, who took charge in the 1930s, in the early part of the 1930s, he became the voice of that anger and resentment, that we need to teach the rest of the world a lesson for what it did to us as a result of the Treaty of Versailles. The economy of Germany, that was also in tatters. Why? Because Germany had been ordered under the Treaty of Versailles, if you remember, to pay a huge war indemnity of 33 billion US dollars, right? So that left the German economy in tatters, right? So Germany said, we do not want to follow this treaty, which is so anti-German. The second major cause was this person who you see in the illustration. Because when he became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933, and then he took over also as the president a year later, he gained complete control of Germany. He began to violate several terms and conditions of the Treaty of Versailles. He began building the German armed forces, which was one of the conditions under the treaty, that you cannot exceed a certain number of people in the army, the navy, etc. So Hitler started violating the terms and conditions of the Treaty of Versailles. Then the third major reason was the rise of fascism and Nazism, about which we have read in great detail in the Rise of Dictatorships chapter. These two persons, Benito Mussolini of Italy and Adolf Hitler of Germany. My style is not to kind of show you a mass of words. I am a very visual person, so I like to put in a lot of pictures to make it interesting for you, because your textbook does not have pictures, and I have seen that in the classroom it's not always possible to show photographs. So my attempt is to make you interested in this particular story. So under Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany, both the countries, as we saw in the previous chapter, they adopted extremely aggressive, militant, expansionist tendencies, that we want to have lot more territory under our control. Why should only Britain and France have all the fun? Italy wanted to revive the glory of the old Roman Empire. Remember, Rome was known to be a very glorious empire. Italy wanted to go back to those days. Germany felt that Aryans are the most superior race, right? So they believe that Nazis are superior compared to any other race in any other country in the world, and therefore we need to get back the old prestige of Germany. So Italy attacked Abyssinia, while Hitler flouted the clauses in the Treaty of Versailles, as I told you. By what did he do? By he attacked Czechoslovakia and he took over Austria. Okay, so this is what happened in both Italy and Germany. All this was happening in the theater of Europe. So there was something called, now this may not technically be on your textbook, but it's always important to know the rest of the things so that your understanding is better. And when your understanding is better, your answers will look that much better. So Ratta Mat Maro, just understand it as a story. There was something called the Anti-Comintern Pact, which was signed between Germany under Hitler and Imperial Japan, okay, which was under the Emperor. So the Germany and Japan signed this Anti-Comintern Treaty, which was essentially an anti-communist agreement. This was signed in 1936. Okay, Adolf Hitler was completely anti-democracy and anti-communism. In 1937, Italy also joined it. So this was an anti-Soviet Union. Cominterns was the short form of Communist International. Okay, and the League of Nations, which was set up after the First World War under the Treaty of Versailles in 1920, did not do anything. It just turned a blind eye to it. Okay, so this was something important which happened. And you can see here Hitler and Germany and Japan. Japan's flag at that time was different. It was this kind of a flag. And on top, you can see the bear. That is a symbol of the USSR, the Soviet Union. Now, the second main reason was the policy of appeasement that was followed by Britain and France. Now, what exactly is the policy of appeasement? Appeasement means you appease somebody, that you satisfy somebody, keep someone happy. Don't raise an objection even when the other person is doing things which you do not approve of. Okay, so it refers to the policy of conciliating an aggressive power like Germany, like Italy, at the expense of another small country. So, for example, when Germany took over, attacked Austria and Czechoslovakia, the other powers did not do anything. Similarly, it did not do anything when Japan attacked Chinese territories, right? Because they were following a policy of appeasement. So it meant accepting the hostile demands of an aggressive nation so that there is peace. We don't raise objections, just like you have a neighbor who is a very problematic character, but if you take him on, then there will be a fight because he will also retaliate. But if you just accept it and turn a blind eye, there will be peace. So this is known as the policy of appeasement. So under the policy of appeasement, what was happening is that Britain and France, which were the more prominent, which were the victors of the First World War, they followed a policy of appeasement towards Germany and Italy, which were both under dictators, Hitler and Mussolini. You can see Hitler and Mussolini on the right hand side of the illustration, right? On the left hand side are the leadership of Britain and France. So they knew that Germany was angry. They knew exactly that they had done something wrong to Germany under the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War. They thought that if Germany's grievances were removed, that if we somehow, take care of Germany's issues, their complaints, it will not disturb world peace. So they allowed Germany to rearm, that is, increase the number of their armed forces, increase the number of armaments, remilitarize Rhineland. All this was not allowed under the Treaty of Versailles, and also capture Austria and Czechoslovakia, which ideally should not be done. So Britain and France followed this policy of appeasement. Now, what exactly happened now? Now Hitler and Mussolini on the left-hand side of the illustration. So Hitler wanted to unite all Germans under one nation, that it should be all Germans, one nation. So what he did in September 1938, 1 year before the official start of the Second World War, he focused on 3 million Germans who were living in a part of Czechoslovakia, which was known as Sudetenland. It is mentioned here in the map, right? He focused on this particular region where there were 3 million, that is 30 lakh Germans staying. He said they are Germans, so that should be German territory. Why should it be under Czechoslovakia? So prime ministers of England and France, they met Hitler and Mussolini to avoid a confrontation, to have talks. They met in Munich, in a place called Munich. Okay, they agreed to Hitler's conditions, okay, without consulting whether Czechoslovakia will be okay with that or not. So Germany captured Sudetenland, which was actually a part of Sudetenland, which was part of Czechoslovakia. A few months later, Germany got even more greedy. It captured all of Czechoslovakia because it realized that when we are capturing Sudetenland, these people are not saying anything. So why not capture the entire country, right? Winston Churchill, who was not prime minister at that time, he was not prime minister of, at that time it was Chamberlain. He was not prime minister of England at that time in 1938. He subsequently became during the war. He called the Munich Agreement as a disaster of the first magnitude, which means that what you have done is absolutely unacceptable. You have, prostrated before a dictator. So he was totally disapproving of it. Please remember this. This is all the background history which you should be aware of. I'm not saying Ratta Maro, but you should be aware of it in case if you get, because in these days, understanding application kind of questions, a general understanding will really help you get better with it. Okay, then the third big cause was the Japanese invasion of China. Now you are seeing the Japanese invasion of China. All this was Germany, Italy, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Britain, France. All these are in Europe. Away from Europe, in Asia, Japan and China were also in conflict. So Japan also, like Germany and Italy, had expansionist plans. It also wanted to increase its territory under the emperor. So they wanted to dominate the far eastern part of the world. So Japan and China had earlier fought on the same side of the Allies in World War I. But Japan had got more concessions and it had developed its navy as compared to China. So what it did was that in 1931, it set up a government in Manchuria. Despite this time, the League of Nations opposed it, but Japan said, "Chal put, I don't care. Okay, I don't care. I will do what I want to do." This was the Japanese flag at that time. Okay. Japan also started an undeclared war against China, and many Chinese cities they were able to conquer. The League of Nations now, having realized that unki kuch chalti nahi hai, nobody cares, Japan doesn't care. This time they did not even oppose it verbally. Okay, and Japan then joined Germany and Italy, Berlin and Rome, to because like these two countries, it also wanted to expand its territories. So this was happening in the theater of Asia. The rest of it was all happening in Europe. Now, in 1933, something very important happened. And as you can see, Japan quit the League of Nations. It said that we don't find any reason to be part of this league. And they started occupying British and American territories, which were in China. Within China, both Britain and America had some territories, controlled some territories like colonies. So Japan started occupying that. Now you would think that Britain and America should object, but what they did, Britain and France, what they did was they kind of said, let's ignore, because we can use Japan to control China better. It will become weak and then we can take on Japan. But right now, let Japan do all this dirty work, let it control China, and then we will take care of Japan later. So that was what the politics that Britain, France, USA, etc. were playing. The fourth big reason was the failure of the League of Nations. The important aspect which we saw in the First World War chapter also, was that the USA never joined the League of Nations because the US Congress, etc., Senate, they did not want USA to get embroiled in the politics of Europe, right? So even those who were part of the League of Nations were not really interested in following the principle of collective security, that all of us should be responsible. Everyone was flouting the guidelines. Nobody was following the rules which were laid down under the Charter of the League of Nations. Italy refused to obey the League's diktat. Japan refused to. Germany refused to. Britain and France followed the policy of appeasement, right? Poland went and occupied part of Lithuania. Again, the League did not do anything. So you can see here, the League of Nations, everybody is tearing pages from it, and nobody is really interested in obeying what the League of Nations has to say. And subsequently, the League also stopped saying anything. So the failure of the League of Nations, this used to be the emblem of the League of Nations. It failed to maintain international peace. This is very important. It was either defied when they said something, they said, we will not care, or they just ignored it. Okay, or they ignored it. The League of Nations also ignored what was happening. Countries, as a result, they entered into all kinds of military alliances. The members, because they were supposed to impose, if somebody did something wrong, they were supposed to impose economic sanctions, like right now United Nations is doing. How many of you agree that United Nations is doing the League of Nations? Most people believe so, because right now Russia, Ukraine war has been happening. Israel, Hamas is happening. Israel, Iran, USA, Israel, and Iran happened. The League of Nations, the United Nations is simply unable to do anything. It is President Trump who is like the person who is supposed to, who is trying to maintain world peace, but that's another story in itself, right? So international peace at that time, it was League of Nations was finding it very difficult to maintain it. So the failure of the League of Nations. I hope you have understood each of the causes very clearly. If you have understood it, follow my key points, what I've written out here, you will get full marks. This is the way you need to present your answers as well. Then came the immediate cause of the Second World War. Now, under the Treaty of Versailles, the port of Danzig, you remember, was handed over to Poland, right? And Germany was unhappy because there were many Germans staying there, just like in Sudetenland. There were many Germans staying there, and he also felt that was a critical port. And why should Poland have it? So Poland was accused. Hitler said, you're committing atrocities against the Germans who are living in that town of Danzig. So I want it back, right? So Hitler wanted it because it would also provide Germany with a corridor to areas that it had lost after First World War. After First World War, many areas it had to give to the other victorious countries. if he controlled Danzig, it would be thought in Hitler's mind. German armies invaded Poland. And by now, Britain and France were thinking that so far we have followed the policy of appeasement. This is going to prove very costly. So France gave an ultimatum to Germany saying that stop it, you cannot do that. And then Germany attacked France. On September 3, Britain and France declared war on Germany. So now the four countries, Germany versus Poland, France versus Germany, Germany versus France, and then Britain, France together versus Germany. So these four countries had got embroiled in the war. And with that, the Second World War started. The German armies conquered Poland in less than 3 weeks within September itself. And this was the immediate cause of the Second World War. Understood till here? Great. Now, I want you to just understand, just listen to it so that you understand, because I have found that when I was teaching this previously as part of our course, there are many students who would ask me these questions. So I'm just telling it to you. If some of you feel that, "Arey, ye kya to syllabus mein nahi hai," please fast forward it, no problem at all. But it's my duty to make, even if there is one student who is genuinely interested in world history, I would want. One of my students wrote to me just a few days back, 4 days back, that she's so interested as a result of this. So now she's going to pursue international relations, right, at a university in UK. So it's, if even one student gains as a result, I think it's a job well done. So Hitler had done his homework well. So what he did was, apart from the treaty that is signed with Japan, which is anti-Soviet Union, now look at his politics. Now in the illustration, you are finding Germany's Hitler with USSR's, Soviet Union's Joseph Stalin. So what he did was, he also signed a non-aggression pact with Russia in 1939, August 1939, 1 month before the start of the Second World War. So he started with Japan, signed with Japan, which was supposed to be anti-Russia, but now he signed another pact with Russia, and he said, I will not attack you, you will not attack me. What was the logic? What was the politics behind it? Because both Russia and Germany wanted to attack Poland, right? Each taking, you take half the country, I take half the country. Soviet Union wanted to get back the Baltic states, which were like Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, because it had lost them after the First World War. First World War, remember, in 1917, the October Revolution came, and then the new Russia was not really part of the Allies. So Germany and Stalin, Hitler and Stalin signed this pact. How did the treaty help Russia and Germany? It helped Hitler get Russian neutrality, that at least Russia will not attack me. Right? Okay. And when he was attacking Poland, Russia knew that Hitler could not be a long-term dependable friend. So, but it gave them, while the pact was there, at least now he will not attack. It gave them time to kind of, arm themselves, get more strong, that tomorrow if Hitler attacks us, we will be more strong in taking on Adolf Hitler and Germany. So this is the background information as far as the pacts were concerned, so that you essentially know about what really was happening in Europe at that time in 1938-39. Okay, so with this, I stop here. Thank you very much for your time and patience. Do share the videos with your friends, with your juniors next year, and subscribe, because the whole idea is to make you interested in history, so that when you study, it doesn't feel like a burden. You should enjoy it, because when you enjoy it, half the battle is won. You would be able to do much better in your examination. I'll meet you now in part 2 of Second World War chapter. Till then, tata, bye-bye, namaskar.